What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Sure Buddy podcast. This week we got a special guest. We got Nabil here joining us from Atlanta to give us some takes. We're gonna try something a little bit different this week. We're gonna do some overreaction takes and kind of see how that goes. What's going on, Nabil?
What's up, guys? Glad to be on the podcast. Thanks for having me.
So let's just dive right in. I think I got some kind of doozy ones here. See what you guys think. Let's start off with.
Can you pause for a second and recognize my Freddie Freeman shirt on the podcast, please?
You want me to start
That
over?
you know what WS stands for, by the way, guys? Is that it's just like it says it right here. Did you guys know what that meant or no? Nabil, do you know?
The Giants have taught me recently that
Got it.
World Series
Yeah,
are, we get a few
got
of
it.
them in our neck
Cool.
of the woods.
Yeah, it's been a while. I don't remember that. Anyways, you were
Who did
saying
Byron?
overreactions, Omar?
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it. So the first one I got for you guys is the current seventh seed in the NFC is the Washington Commanders. Overreaction or not, they are going to miss the playoffs.
I think that's an overreaction. Primarily, if we look at the strength of schedule that they have remaining, if you look at the teams that they're coming up against, they all have relative. They're all kind of on skids. We got Titans, the Saints, and the Falcons. Falcons had a rough week this past week, and then the Cowboys to wrap up the season. The one game they have in the mix there is the Eagles. I feel like they can win four out of the next five and make a pretty good shot of coming in the season 12-5. That should earn them a playoff spot.
I think it's in this three-person discussion dynamic. It's interesting that I'm going to fall on the neutral side of it. I think that there's a 50-50 shot that they miss, and this is the reason why. Yeah, I think from a strength of schedule perspective, like there's definitely some winnable games, right? And if Jaden Daniels has a resurgence, and you start seeing him play the way that he was playing early on in the year, then you may see them win all their games. They may win out from here on out, right? Like it's a legitimate possibility. However, Austin Eckler is going to miss the next game, concussion protocol, like almost guaranteed that he sits out the next contest. Him and Brian Robinson will have 2 weeks to get healthy, given that they have a bye next week. So, that definitely works in their favor. But I think health is a question. And then the other thing is the quarterback play. Jaden Daniels has not been impressive the last couple weeks. He's been playing like a rookie. And, then there's the thing that we talked about last week to contend with, and that's the Cliff Kingsbury second half of the season slump. Like it happens I pointed out that the back half of the season, I think he has something like a 28% win rate career. So, we've seen this kind of from him time and time again. And so it's just that, that je ne sais quoi that you can't describe why something happens every year to a sporting organization, but it happens every year. Kind of like how the Lakers can never win a third quarter. There's something about Cliff Kingsbury teams where they just can't win games in the back half of the season when it really matters. So I'm gonna say not overreaction. I'm gonna lean 51%. I'm gonna tip the scales.
Think it's an overreaction at all. I mean, I think they've lost three in a row. Yeah, they've had two of the three games have been tough against Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and then they lost that crazy game to Dallas. But I think ever since the Hail Mary game, Aiden hasn't looked good. Ever since he hurt his ribs, I think the week before that, he hasn't really been that kind of star that he was in the first half of the season. And maybe he's hitting a rookie wall, which is, I mean, expected. But I just don't. I don't see it. They never had a great defense in the first place, so that was always going to be an issue. But look, they got Tennessee next week, which Tennessee played pretty well. I mean, Will Levis looked halfway decent against Houston last week. I don't think that's a gimme game by any means. At New Orleans after the bye, the Rizzlers got them playing real well, right? I think Saints have won two in a row. Derek Carr's back, Kamara. I mean, and then Philadelphia, Atlanta, Dallas. I mean, Philadelphia and Dallas, those are all division games. Those are going to be tough later in the
He's,
season,
do you think
playing for
Chris?
rankings.
Do you think Chris Olave comes back and wears a Guardian helmet?
I hope so. This looks super like a little,
Derek Carr is still throwing to him. He probably should.
yeah. But I don't think it's an overreaction at all, man. I think Arizona is right there on their heels. I mean, the Niners could make a run for it. I mean, so
So
there's
that's the other thing that really kind of sways me into the overreaction bucket. If you look at the other teams that could take that last playoff spot, it's really going to come down to the Cardinals, the Bucks, or maybe some other NFC team like the Rams or the Niners you mentioned. I feel like the Rams or Niners, their probability of making the playoffs are pretty low. So that leaves you Cardinals and Bucks. The Cardinals, I think, out of those two teams, the better give me better feeling that they're going to make the playoffs. But then if you look at their remaining schedule, they got some tough games. They got the Vikings, they got the Cardinals. They got the Seahawks, which divisional games are always tough. They got two of those. Actually, they got three more of those. They got Seahawks, Niners, and Rams. Plus, they got the Vikings, and then you don't really know what the Panthers are these days, but they play them on the 22nd of December. So I think they have a couple more difficult games than the Commanders do, and I think that gives the Commanders the edge over the playoff spot.
and on
Wait, so
that
you're
note,
saying
have you seen the Bucks schedule? They got at Carolina, they got at home for Vegas, at the Chargers, at Dallas, again Carolina, and then home against New Orleans. That's a pretty favorable schedule to I think they could easily go 5-1 in their last six.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it
yeah,
comes down to those two teams fighting.
All right, fellas, let's go to the next topic here. This is the topic of the day right here because our boy Daniel Jones just signed with the Minnesota Vikings. So, overreaction or not, Daniel Jones will be the starter in Minnesota next year.
massive overreaction. Massive overreaction.
I don't know,
Massive
man.
overreaction. Dude, Daniel Jones sucks. Like, he sucks. Like, he's so ass. Like, he's such a bad quarterback, bro. I don't understand why people have been talking about him like I've seen people like mentioning him as like a must pick up, fantasy quarterback in like week 3, week 4, as late as even like week 6. I don't understand the Daniel Jones hype. I think Daniel Jones can just come sit on the couch with us, man, and just commentate, talk sports, whatever. But throwing
I like this
balls to
bunny.
players in the NFL is not going to be it for him, man. They've got their bridge quarterback. They've got a great rookie. What the hell do they need? I mean,
But
what
this is
do
for
they
next
need him
year.
for?
But this is
I
for
don't
next
know.
year. Look, in my opinion, I love KOC. Kevin O'Connell, I think, is one of the best
What's
quarterbacks,
real quick?
coaches in the NFL.
What's Sam Darnold's contract situation next year?
He's a free agent. He's a free agent, and he's
So
gonna want to get paid.
he's earning how much this year?
I think like 10 million.
Okay, so 10 million he's earning this year. He's a free agent next year, and he had certainly surprised people, right? The only reason why we're talking about like, oh man, is he gonna like get to earn a big contract, is because he shocked us by not being even more ass than Daniel Jones was. Like
Sam
the only
Darnold
reason we're
was
talking
Daniel
about him
Jones
was
before he went to Minnesota.
how like the fact that he wasn't ass is the reason why we're talking about like, okay, yeah, like is he, but he's got continuity. I mean, he's got some like investment with this organization. I could see them just doubling down on him again, using him as a bridge for another year or two, and then bringing JJ along more slowly. But Daniel Jones, I mean, if you, as the Minnesota Vikings, intend on signing Daniel Jones and letting Darnold explore free agency, then you're basically saying that we're going to have one of the most overpaid and controversial backups immediately to our true rookie quarterback that we've seen probably in the last 3 or 4 years. But how has that story always ended?
So here's the thing, and Nabil, I'll let you be the swing vote here in a second. But they just paid Justin Jefferson 35 million, so that's a big load on their cap pause. But also, Darnold's going to want at least 30, 35 million, if not more than that. I mean, that's the going rate for quarterbacks, right? I mean, they're in the 50s now. I mean, he's probably not going to get that high. But Sam Darnold
No
was
way,
Daniel
dude.
Jones last year. Before this season, Kevin O'Connell rehabbed him, made him into a serviceable quarterback. The Vikings have firsthand seen what Daniel Jones is capable of. When Daniel Jones beat them in the playoffs a couple years ago, he looked like he looked like it. He looked like the quarterback. That's what got him paid. That game is what got him paid. And he ran the ball. He threw the ball well, and he beat Minnesota, and he has a playoff win for that. And so I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I don't think it's overreaction. I think it's very possible. Let JJ come back slowly from a knee injury, and let Daniel Jones start a couple of games for cheap, and then let somebody else pay Sam Darnold.
What do you think, Nabil?
So let me preface this by saying I am not a Daniel Jones fan. I do not like Daniel Jones. I do not think he's a
Neither am
great
I.
quarterback.
Who
Yeah,
is?
who
Because
is?
he got released in the middle of the season on a 2-9 team or whatever they are, and that's a bad sign. That being said, I don't think this is an overreaction, partly due to the reasons that you guys just said. Sam Darnold is going to get paid. Kevin O'Connell worked his magic with him just as he has with Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs last year. He is the QB whisperer, and he just got his quarterback a really good contract for next year, better than he would have, that coming into this season. So pretty much Sam Darnold's out. So that leaves JJ McCarthy and now Daniel Jones, assuming they keep Daniel Jones next year. I agree with Jay. Like he even though he said it was an overreaction, he kind of argued that Daniel Jones could be a bridge quarterback until JJ gets healthy. So I think the question is, when does JJ get healthy? When is he both healthy in terms of his legs as well as does he understand the playbook? And I can see them using Daniel Jones as a bridge until week 4, 5, 6, until JJ is ready to take the helm. And so for that reason, I don't think they're going in expecting Daniel Jones to be the franchise quarterback, but I think they can use him as the starter on week 1 until their true franchise quarterback is up and running.
What makes Daniel Jones a better bridge than Sam Darnold?
Cheaper.
Money.
Okay. Well, we Daniel Jones is going to be paid by how much?
I mean, let's say he gets the same contract as Sam Darnold this year, 1 year, 10 million, 1 year, 8 million. What Baker got with Tampa Bay 2 years ago. What was it? Like a 1 year, $8 million contract? Or what did Gardner Minshew get? He got 2 years, 25 million or something like that. I mean, that's
I think we're all on the same page that we see Darnold as, I'm sorry,
Daniel
Daniel Jones
Jones.
as a bridge quarterback, right? So we're saying that the, I guess the premium that you're going to pay for Darnold is not going to be worth it. You're saying 40 million. I think he's a $20 million quarterback. I'm thinking that you're talking about $10 million for 1 year of Daniel Jones versus exactly what Nabil said, depending on JJ McCarthy's health, recovery period, etc. If we're talking about 20 million a year for potentially a necessity of 2 to 3 years of Sam Darnold, I would rather have 2 to 3 years of Darnold than 1 year of Daniel Jones. Because if you go to Daniel Jones for a 1 year bridge situation, then by week 4, you're going to be starting JJ McCarthy. And you're basically, you can have $20 million went well spent or $10 million poorly spent.
I don't know. And this is my personal hot take. I don't think Daniel Jones is a bridge quarterback. I think that he could be a legit starter with Kevin O'Connell as their coach, as his coach. I'm not a huge JJ McCarthy fan coming into the draft. I just thought, I mean, he didn't throw the ball much in Michigan. I mean, I just think he's a poor man's Bo Nix, which is not saying much. I don't think. I mean, he's super young and he has potential, but I don't see it with JJ. Even in college, he wasn't carrying Michigan. He wasn't the reason that they won the national championship. It was their
I
defense
think
and run game. So
if there's anything the first 12 weeks of this season has taught us is that nothing from the combine and preseason is true about these quarterbacks. I mean, everything is flipped on its head. So, the one showing that he had was a bright spot and seems like it could be good. So we'll see. What's the next topic?
and this is the reason why we brought Nabil here on this video right here. So the next one, overreaction or not? If the Niners miss the playoffs, Kyle Shanahan will be fired.
All right, you want me to go first?
Go for it.
All right. I'm gonna bury the lead here, but I'm gonna state my case. I'm gonna say this is an overreaction. Look, the way I think about it is this: two ends of the spectrum. One is you hang on to your coach for too long, right? They've won in the past, and you're letting history define your future actions. Mike McCarthy in Dallas, I mean, Jerry Jones just came out and said, hey, he's a Super Bowl winning coach, so he's going to be my coach. What was that, like 15 years ago he won a Super Bowl? What has he done since then? Some pretty, uh, you know, lack of not very good couple of postseasons with Dallas. He's underachieved with that level of talent, right? So you got that end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is you fire a coach that has coming off of two Super Bowls in the last 5 years, four NFC championships in the last 5 years, right? You're firing him as soon as he has one bad season. If those are the two ends of the spectrum. The challenge for Kyle Shanahan is he doesn't work for Jerry Jones. He works for the Yorks. And Jed York has proven in the past that he is not afraid to be on this end of the spectrum, where he will fire Jim Harbaugh after 1 year of a poor season after taking on the Super Bowl, right? So that's kind of Kyle's situation. He's on that end of the spectrum. However, there's two questions that I ask myself. Does Kyle have a better relationship with the Yorks than Jim Harbaugh did? I think the answer is yes. There was a lot of speculation, a lot of reporting around that weird dynamic, and some of the stuff that Jim Harbaugh did that might have been career limiting for him. I think Kyle has a better relationship with him. The other is, has Jed York learned from past mistakes? Has he learned from his failures or whatever the case may be? That was one of the bigger decisions he made early in his career. The Niners had a couple of very dark years after that. Has he gotten better and learned that, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to make these rash decisions? Give coaches a little bit more leeway before you make that call. I think the answer to that question is also yes. So while I think that he's in a rut, he has to figure out his offense. He has to do better with the talent that he has available to him. He's underperforming in that standpoint. I do think it's an overreaction to say he will be fired after this season.
Go ahead, Rashid.
No, I don't think it's an overreaction at all. I think, like you said, Jed fired Jim Harbaugh when things got a little stale, and I think that's exactly what's happening in San Francisco. I think things are getting a little stale. I mean, Debo has underperformed, and I think the offense in general. I mean, yes, CMC was out. Purdy's not coming up with the same kind of magic plays that he had last year or even the year before. I just think that maybe they just need a new voice in there. I mean, look, Kyle will get a job the next day. I'm not saying Kyle Shanahan's a bad coach, but I just think they maybe need a new voice in the locker room, because I think Kyle just kind of putting his head down and calling plays, and is just, it's not working anymore. And I think yeah, injuries are a reason. And I think when they had the 6-win season a couple of years ago after the Super Bowl loss, that was also an injury plagued season. But you know, everyone has injuries, so I don't think that's going to be an excuse. I don't think it's an overreaction. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. But because Kyle's just too good of a coach, but I don't think it's an overreaction. I think they could totally fire him and try to find someone new.
Yeah, I mean, could it happen? I mean, anything can happen when you've got Jed York at the helm, and I mean, not to say that he's irrational, but I do think that he's thinking about it. He's taking the approach of like the average man, right? Like the average fan. Like if I was a Niner fan, I would actually have like a great deal of confidence in him as a leader to see what happens with an organization when the voice just gets stale. You need a change. Take a look at that and actually have that as like, a deciding factor, right? That's the only thing that could impact his job stability. Like that's the only way that you see Kyle move on to the Bears or whoever else, whatever the wish list destination is, right? And I'll give you the perfect example of that. Like I was talking about like kind of like a microcosm of Kyle's leadership in that organization was Brandon Ayuk in the black shorts. That was like the perfect example, right? Like you've got your dude that, you guys were like, yeah, go ahead, explore the market, see what's out there for you. Like, see if somebody wants to, make this trade move with us. We'll discuss it, blah, blah, blah. You play this whole song and dance, and then you end up signing him anyways. Okay, so now you gave him his payday. Now, presumably, he's your guy, right? You would think that he has a level of, I guess, loyalty and commitment to the organization, but he showed in the first 3 or 4 weeks out on the field, what level of, I guess, loyalty to Kyle Shanahan, and I guess just his candor shows what Kyle Shanahan is as a leader. Kyle Shanahan, in many ways, is Mike Tomlin-esque. He can be their best friend. He can, coach up and scheme up a good game. But can he be the disciplinarian? Can he implement a system? Can he implement just a way of being the Belichick way? Is he ever going to be somebody that has a grasp over the locker room like that? Probably not. And that is the type of personality that could get a Jed York to make a decision that ultimately would end up benefiting the franchise. I just don't see it happening. I think that the Niners have a one more year window. Now, if next year they don't win the Super Bowl, like anything other than win the Super Bowl, miss the playoffs, losing the conference championship game, losing the Super Bowl, whatever it is, then yeah, he's out. Then you just got to go on and make the move. But I think for all intents and purposes, their window's still open next year. And why would you make that? You don't make that type of a move while your window's still open. Once the door is slammed shut, then yeah, all bets are off.
Here's a quick take
Windows
for you,
Windows
for
still
both of
open.
you. Is Kyle a better OC than a head coach?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
If anything, Dan Campbell has shown us what a head coach should be in the NFL.
So there's two sides to that. I will say yes, primarily because when you see Kyle on the sidelines during games, he is in his sheet calling plays. When the defense is on the field, he's in his sheet trying to figure out what plays to call. And as a head coach, I believe you need to be on both sides of the ball, watching the game, figuring out what's happening, managing the clock. That's your primary responsibility. And Kyle has shown time and time again when it comes to coaches' challenges or timeouts or just end of half situations, the 2 minute drill. He has
Exactly.
not really managing it, and I think part of that could be because he has tunnel vision in his play sheet.
Yeah.
However,
When have you ever seen Dan Campbell look at a play sheet?
let me hold on. One caveat though. I think it's better to have Kyle as a head coach though, because as an OC, he will leave.
Amazing.
That
That's
caveat
perfect.
was just
That was the perfect. Like, I couldn't have scripted it any better. Whatever that caveat was,
that
it's
caveat is
pointless after he said what he said. Look, man, I was like, we were just talking about this. Dan Campbell was accused of like running up the score against the Cowboys, I believe it was. And I don't know who it was. Like, I want to say it was like Chris Christie or something like that was like upset that the Lions are, accusing the
Chris
Lions of running
Christie
up
even
this.
commenting.
Yeah, exactly. Of like running up the score, right? And he said Dan Campbell is classless. And you know what Dan Campbell said? Dan Campbell said the last time I was accused of being classless was when I was drinking wine straight from the bottle. That dude is just like he's a dude, man. Like he's a
Yeah.
guy, he's out there, like his team loves him, like they love playing for him. Nabil, sorry, we lost you for a second there. What was your caveat?
My caveat is it's better to have Kyle as a head coach versus an OC, because as an OC, he will get picked by another team to be the head coach. So your hands are kind of tied. So you have to just you live with it.
All right. Well, here we go. I saved the most controversial one for last, and it's my personal favorite here. Overreaction or not, Bryce Young was the correct pick as the number one pick in last year's draft over CJ Stroud. And I'm gonna go first because I was excited to talk about this one. I actually think if you look at what Bryce Young has been dealing with in terms of a new head coach and the level of talent around him, he has actually performed better. Yes, I will give you CJ Stroud had a fantastic year last year, but he had Nico Collins. Tank Dell was a stud. I mean, they even had a decent running game with Devin Singletary last year. He has Joe Mixon this year. D'Amico Ryans is a pretty good coach. Bobby Slowick was getting head coach interviews after last year. Good OC. But I mean, the potential I saw last week against Kansas City, Bryce Young was throwing dimes out there. He looked solid against a really good defense. My only concern with Bryce Young is that he's small. I mean, he looks like a seventh grader when he runs out the field sometimes, especially when he stands next to his O line. But I think if you switch positions, if you put Bryce Young on the Texans and CJ Stroud on the Panthers, I think Bryce Young performs just as good, if not better.
Man. So I don't know. Maybe you've forgotten about this. I understand, these things start to happen as we progress
Get
in
older.
life. Maybe you've forgotten about this. What's that dude's name? The dude that like throws the ball around in Tampa Bay.
Baker Mayfield.
So Baker Mayfield had like, probably the worst tenure anyone has had with any organization, right? With which organization?
Carolina.
Hmm. So he's got talent, right?
Who has talent?
He's Baker Mayfield. Like he's a capable,
Yeah.
like talented quarterback, right?
Right.
He had no I know, right?
Yeah, I was like, how'd you do that? Okay.
Yeah, how does that work? So he had no weapons, right?
No, not in Carolina, no.
Was Chuba Hubbard there with him when he was there as a
Maybe as a
backup?
rookie.
I think he was like a second string, third string running
Yeah.
back. Okay. So got talent, didn't have weapons, and look at what happened to him when he moved on, right? So the only way that what you're saying that actually comes to fruition, that we sit back and look at Bryce Young as legitimately a better selection than CJ Stroud, is if he leaves Carolina. Carolina is just a clown show of an organization, man. Like they are the only reason that the Raiders aren't the most pathetic organization in the National Football League.
Disagree, man. I mean, yes, their owner is
They
useless, but they
Yeah.
got a good coach.
And is
No,
he selling the team in the next 3 to 5 years?
no.
There's no indications of that, right?
So
There's
unless he
there's
goes
no
full Woody
indication of that.
Johnson and kind of ruins the team from the top down, that's the only. I think the
You
coaching, the
can
GM is the former. I think he's an assistant GM from the Bills, Dan Morgan. I think they drafted pretty well. Leggett seems like a solid wide receiver. I think they got a decent Jatavian Sanders as a tight end. Look, they have mediocre talent. They need more talent. I'm not doubting that. I'm just saying that if CJ
the
Stroud was in the same position, if he was on Carolina, he would be hot trash.
fish rots from the head down, man. How many times has an organization gone out and got made a selection or two, who made the right pick here and there, but at the end of the day, they just suck as an organization. Look at the Commanders. This didn't come around for them until they sold. I mean, they had to completely wipe the board and redo everything in order to have like a modicum of success, right? Like a modicum of success. They're better than we expected. They're not a great football team by any means. They're just better than they had a modicum of success. It took wiping the slate clean. I think that the Panthers are one of those few organizations, and my prediction is that Bryce Young doesn't get moved on from this organization until it's too late for him. And then he's just going to end up being a perennial backup, somebody that we talk about as like he's going to be basically Teddy Bridgewater. And that's what his ceiling is going to be. Now, from a talent perspective, is he maybe better than CJ Stroud? Yeah, probably. But is that actually like, is that ever going to be realized in his career? No.
So
Nabil, what are the chances that Jay learned the word modicum just like a few hours ago? He's like
It was
kind
decided to
of
in
drop it in
overreaction
it
and
over.
was
overreaction.
it was in my pre-pod research.
So I'm on the fence on this one. I think, fundamentally, I think QBs are more nurture than nature, right? You get drafted in the NFL, like you're a top tier athlete. You can throw the ball. Nature is there for 95, 90%, 99% of these guys. Now, the nurture aspect is like where things start to fall apart. I think if CJ Stroud was on the Carolina Panthers, would he be good? No, I don't think he would be good. So because of that, I don't think this is an overreaction. I think the jury's still out and time will tell because we just got to get Bryce out of that situation. I mean, if you look at the statistics, you look at what Andy Dalton has done in the same offense. He hasn't been great. And we've seen Andy Dalton do a lot better than he has with the Carolina Panthers. So that's just a shitty organization, shitty situation. Like whatever's happening to Bryce Young is I think you got to take Bryce Young out of that situation to even evaluate him properly. CJ Stroud, if you said this last year, right, that would be an overreaction. But CJ
Yeah.
has come down to earth a little bit, and so I think I'm on the fence. I think I'll pull a J. I'm gonna go 51% not overreaction, just because of what Bryce is dealing with in Carolina.
So let me give you a hypothetical. The Panthers lose out, then the Raiders land the second. No, the Raiders land the first pick. The Jags, the Giants, they win out. So now we've got the Raiders first pick, Panthers second pick. Raiders draft Shador Sanders, sign Dion, hypothetically. Now you've got the Panthers on the board, second pick. What are they going to do? Not what would you do? What are they going to do?
I mean, why not? Why even make it the second pick? Just put them right there at the top in this for this hypothetical. Do they
No,
take a
because
quarterback number
because
one?
I even
You
in a
just,
hypothetical situation, I want the Raiders to have the first pick.
I think they trade. What I think they should do, and I think what I think they will do is if Bryce continues like he is right now, they'll trade down to a quarterback needy team and try to just fill up. Their roster has is devoid of talent. They need a lot of talent, offense, defense, everywhere. So I think they trade down and they don't. The question is, then are they going to take a quarterback? No, they're not.
In no way, shape, or form do you see them taking a quarterback.
Not if Bryce play keeps playing like he is right now,
What do you think, Nabil?
like he's played in the last 2 weeks, like he played in Germany, like he played against Kansas City. I don't think so.
Yeah, so you said don't not what you think they should do, but what you think they will do. What I think
Will
they
do.
should do is not take a quarterback. What I think they will do is take a quarterback, and they will ruin that
And
one,
that was a
and they
setup,
will
actually.
ruin the next one, and they will ruin the next one until David Tepper starts taking his hands out of the mixing pot. They will continue to just mess
Dude,
quarterbacks up.
have you guys heard of that bar that is on the way to the stadium that puts up signs about how awful he is?
Jay,
And
here's a question for you. Would you say that anything David Tepper touches
turns to shit?
turns to shit?
Ah, all right, we're gonna skip that question for a second. I want to go back to the Bryce Young one. Look, I saw an interesting stat the other day, or a chart the other day, and you guys know how much I love charts. I was talking about QB induced pressure on one axis, and Bryce Young has the fewest QB induced pressure rates out of all the quarterbacks. This was pretty much like Caleb Williams and Justin Fields were the only ones with the worst QB induced pressures, meaning they got pressure because the offensive line was shit, basically. That's what it comes down to, right? Now, when it came to disruption pressure EPA, so like the EPA that they have during, with all of this chaos happening around them, Bryce Young, surprisingly, through I forget what it was, the first through week 10, had the same disruption EPA as Brock Purdy, which is relatively high. Brock Purdy's like in the second tier there. Like the first tier, you kind of have the Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, Lamar's, Kyler's. Then the next tier, you have Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, and Bryce Young. And so he's in a shit situation. He's handling it better than maybe other quarterbacks would in that situation. And I think it's just unfair to like completely rule him out. He was the number one pick in the draft for a reason. I mean, actually, arguably, he was the number one pick in the draft for a reason. He could have slipped a little bit, but at the end of the day, he has talent. He has the attributes. Put him in a different situation before you rule him out completely. If I was, here's the other question, right? Like if you're the Raiders and you need a quarterback, and let's say you don't get your quarterback in the draft, do you take him? You wouldn't take a flyer on Bryce Young.
I don't want anybody an inch under 6'3" quarterbacking my team going
That means you
forward.
want Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is the Raider quarterback of the
Let's
future. That
speak it
would
into
be,
existence.
yeah,
Daniel
exactly.
Jones to the Raiders.
That's our next episode. We're
Yeah.
just going to talk about Daniel Jones to the Raiders on our next
Daniel
video.
Jones signs record contract, becomes the highest
Yeah,
paid person in the history of the world as a Las Vegas Raiders
yeah.
quarterback.
I would, I can genuinely say I've rooted for, the same teams my whole life, and I think it's absolute blasphemy to jump ship, to abandon ship, like to betray your team. Like I own one non-Lakers, Dodgers, Raiders pair of piece of merchandise, and that's the Marshawn Lynch Seahawks Super Bowl jersey. That's it. That's because Marshawn Lynch is my favorite player ever. But I would genuinely burn all my Raiders shit and jump ship if that were to happen.
If they signed Bryce Young or Daniel Jones.
Yeah, Nabil, just send me a Niners jersey, bro.
Bryce Young is the
I'll
same
get on
height
that.
as Kyler Murray. He's at 5'10", and Baker Mayfield's at 6 foot. Russell Wilson's 5'11". Drew Brees was 6 foot flat. You can find good talent under 6'1".
You have to
I
have
mean, Bryce
tremendous talent to
Young
overcome.
throwing to Jacoby and Brock, that's the future, bro.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
All right. Well,
That's enough of
let's
that.
let's 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 put a bow on it right there. Appreciate Nabil for you coming on today. And hope to have you on in future episodes here.
Yeah, drop a comment in the comment below if y'all want me back. Let these guys know what you think.
All right. Take it easy, fellas.
Happy
Yeah, guys.
Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Take
y'all.
care.
Bye.